Hong Kong, Chungking Mansions. It's one of the best places for travel vloggers in Hong Kong to make clickbait videos.
Hell on earth in this mafia mansion.
It served as the romantic backdrop for one of Wong Kar-wai's most famous films. It's full of danger and crime. At least that's what some local kids hear from their parents. Or is it simply the most misunderstood building in Hong Kong?
Welcome to Chungking Mansions. Come on in.
Almost every week, Jeffrey Andrews hosts a tour of Chungking Mansions for tourists, schools, local companies, and organizations.
So this is where we usually welcome our participants and ask them how many of you have been to Chungking Mansions. Usually a lot of people will say no. And I always like to joke that you don't need a visa to come into Chungking Mansions. I also like to call this the international border of Chungking Mansions because a lot of local Chinese don't like to cross this line. They like to exchange money and run out.
Andrews is the third generation of an Indian family that came to Hong Kong in the 1960s. He has been working as a social worker in Chungking Mansion for over 16 years.
I always like to say Chungking Mansions is in the heart of Hong Kong, or if not Kowloon at least. It's right next to the harbour. You've got the mosque nearby, and we're right in the middle of Nathan Road, one of the most popular streets in Hong Kong. But then suddenly you have this kind of low-end economic space, and I think that's what makes it so unique.
Indeed, Chungking Mansions doesn't feel like anywhere else in Hong Kong. Inside, you're hard-pressed to see any signs in Chinese. You also don't hear as much Cantonese. Instead, you hear conversations in many other Asian or African languages at the turn of every corner.
It's a mini United Nations, literally, and I know personally from my experience, over 100 nationalities congregate in this space. Festivals are celebrated here. People from all walks of life, all backgrounds are here. If you want to buy something that's from your religion, you can find it. If you want to eat a curry, you can eat it. If you want to eat fufu, you can eat it. If you want to buy rubber shoes, bafanyu, old school shoes, you could go and get that in one of these shops here. It's a mini city in itself.
Oh, just amazing. Simply awesome.
Made up of 5 blocks of 17-story buildings, the complex was developed by Filipino-Chinese businessman Jamie Chua Tianpo. Completed in 1961, it was marketed as a luxury residential building for all. A year later, the 2-floor shopping arcade, which is what most people know as Chungking Mansions, opened. So, in a city where over 91% of the population is ethnic Chinese, how did Chungking Mansions become a haven for Hong Kong's ethnic minorities?
$10, thanks. Yeah. Now, is this very spicy or not? Spicy, yes. I don't want too spicy. What's the least spicy you can give me? This is, to speak a little bit academically, a center of the global south in Hong Kong. Many people think of Hong Kong as being international in Central or in Lam Kwai Fong, but I think this is the most international place in Hong Kong.
Anthropology professor Gordon Matthews began researching Chungking Mansions in 2006. He would visit the building almost every week, sometimes spending the night in one of its hundreds of guest houses. Matthews published his book about Chungking Mansions in 2011, referring to the building as the ghetto at the center of the world.
The building opened up in 1962 and was falling apart by the early 1970s. GIs on rest and relief from Vietnam came here, and I understand there were a number of brothels in this building. By the early 80s, you had a bigger South Asian population here. But more than that, this became the center of the hippie travel circuit. Tony Wheeler wrote Lonely Planet, Southeast Asia on a Shoestring. This is what he talked about. When you come to Hong Kong, Chungking Mansions. And so the number of guest houses mushroomed. And all kinds of people doing the backpacking, they came through here. By the late 1990s, it shifted again. And it became more a place where South Asians, but also Africans, were here to engage in low-end globalization.
Low-end globalization was one of the biggest findings in Matthews' research. He discovered that Chungking Mansions was at one point a major trading post between factories in China and individual traders in Africa and other developing countries.
High-end globalization is the globalization of big companies. Apple, Samsung, and so on. Low-end globalization is more the globalization of just a few individuals who don't have a formal company. They're trading, often not completely following the law. In other words, dealing in copy goods sometimes. Not always. Most of what they do is legal, but sometimes it's not. The trade out of Africa, out of South Asia, very often is low-end globalization.
Hong Kong has often been considered a more international-friendly place to do business than mainland China. Traders would first come to Chungking mansions and buy cheap goods like clothing and electronics that were made in China, and then bring them back to their home countries, often in their luggage. One product was particularly popular at the time. Matthews estimated that between 2007 and 2008, at least 20% of mobile phones sold in sub-Saharan African countries had at one point passed through Chungking mansions.
Many of these phones were 14-day phones, which were used European phones coming here. Many were copies, a lot of Chinese copies. They were very important. And this was pre-smartphone. It's very easy to make copies of pre-smartphones. Once smartphones became more widely used, it's harder to make copies. Also, Chinese real phones got better. So the copy phone market began to shrink. The phone market as a whole here began to shrink because many traders could go into China instead. In the 90s and early 2000s, it was hard to get into China to do trade. By about 2008, it was becoming a lot easier, and a lot of traders went there instead of paying a middleman in Hong Kong.
As a result, Chungking Mansions was no longer the trading hub it used to be. Many trading businesses had closed, and most shops today are ethnic stores and restaurants. But Chungking Mansions is still a hub for ethnic minority people to congregate and make a living when they come to Hong Kong.
I came to Hong Kong 1999. Similar face, similar language, India, Pakistan, Nepal. That's why I like the Chungking Mansion.
重慶大廈咧，我1984年讀完書咧，出嚟幫爸爸手啦。咁啊，差唔多41年嘅啦喺重慶大廈。重慶大廈啲人都好好啊，同邊個都會打招呼咯。我哋香港人又好，外國人好，中國人又好，佢嚟到呢度行街，我哋都會同佢哋打招呼，同問佢哋係咪食嘢，乜嘢都會問嘅。
I actually heard about Chungking Mansion back in Ghana even before I came here, and I'm able to speak my language when I come to Chungking Mansion because I see some Ghanaians that we can speak Chi, that is the popular Ghanaian language, and I get the taste of home when I come here. Yes.
With people from different races, cultures, and religions in such close proximity, conflict might seem inevitable. But Matthew says that because Chungking Mansions is so incredibly diverse, it can actually make a person much more tolerant and understanding about the cultures of others.
Some of the stories here are really amazing and telling. Many of the people here, particularly back then, were from India and Pakistan. They were Muslim, and they weren't used to the idea of seeing young women dressed in an unclothed way. One story that I remember vividly was in 2006 when I was first here, seeing a number of young Russian women here. And maybe they were sex workers from Macau, I'm not sure. And a waiter in a cafe downstairs put his hand over my eyes and said, "Mister, do not look, they are bad women." And I went back a month later to the same cafe, the same women were walking by, and the waiter didn't put his hands over my eyes. And I said, "Mukhtar, why aren't you covering my eyes? Those are bad women, aren't they?" And he said, "Mister, they have to make a living just as I have to make a living." And so he learned that Chungking Mansions is a place of business. You don't make any judgments about anybody, which is very interesting. That's what Chungking Mansions does. Live and let live. That's the Chungking Mansions ethos. And that's what he learned judging from that story.
Though people from around the world see Chungking Mansions as a second home, others who don't know much about the building, other than the common stereotypes, think otherwise. To them, it is a place synonymous with crime and disaster. Since the blocks are crammed with guest houses, fires have not come as much of a surprise. And from time to time, Chungking Mansions even saw scandals, including murders and sexual assaults, which were plastered all over the news. While crimes do occur in Chungking Mansions, Matthew says the crime rate was actually not particularly high compared to some other neighborhoods in Hong Kong.
When I wrote my book, I think the most dominant form of illegality was probably asylum seekers working. and they work for lower wages than people outside this building. They make it possible to have restaurants run here and guest houses run here. Now, are there drug dealers here? Yeah. Can you buy dangerous drugs? Yeah, you probably can. But that's simply because the dealers come here rather than because that's the essence of Chungking Mansions. I think they need to think about their own racial attitudes, because a lot of this is racism. It's white and yellow people afraid of black and brown people. Now, that's too directly put. Don't criticize me for this, but that's what it is, really. It's not dangerous in any great criminal sense.
In order to stem the negative press, the building's management made changes to ramp up security. In 2004, they installed hundreds of CCTV cameras on every floor and stairwell. And in the past decades, the building has undergone multiple renovations. Guest houses in Chungking Mansions can cost as little as 200 Hong Kong dollars per night in summer, which is about 1/5 of Hong Kong's average room rate. And with over 200 affordable guest houses and dozens of ethnic shops and restaurants, Chungking Mansions is now one of Hong Kong's most unique attractions, bringing in tourists from every corner of the world. But social worker Andrew says it is still an ongoing mission to change many people's minds about the place.
It's still a lot of Hong Kong people are still worried to come into Chungking Mansions. I must say more and more people are coming in, but to be honest, I was also ashamed myself my first year working here. You know, I had stigma on this building because our community within Hong Kong also has stigma on this building. So I understand, and it took me time to break through that. How? By running these tours and engaging in conversation and seeing they are everyday Hong Kongers. Now I need to do the same thing for the local Hong Kong public. Everyone used to have their head down. Now when I run the tours, you can see they also have pride. Like, people want to know about us, want to hear about us.
It's like biting out of a mango.
Just fresh and cool.
In 2025, the NGO Christian Action opened a diversity hub on the top floor within the complex. The gallery celebrates the contributions and achievements that ethnic minority people have made in Hong Kong. It's also a space for various communities to host meetings and gatherings. What both Matthews and Andrew say they have observed over the years, both in and outside Chungking Mansions, is that society overall is becoming more open to accepting ethnic minority people as real Hong Kongers.
I think the biggest thing you can learn is something that happened during the protests, so I can tell you a story about this. I taught my class here in Chungking Mansions, and a Kenyan man came up to a localist and said, "Can I be a Hong Konger? I love Hong Kong." And the localist said, "Of course, we love people like you." Then a Pakistani came up and said, "Can I be a Hong Konger?" He said, "Of course, we love people like you." But a mainland student came up and said, "Can I be a Hong Konger?" And he said, he looked down, he wouldn't answer. Now, that's racist. That shouldn't be. Everybody should be able to become a Hong Konger. But there is a really interesting shift that this indicates, that it used to be back 20 years ago that people like South Asians and Africans would not be considered Hong Kongers. Now they can be. And mainlanders too, I hope, because they're obviously a deep part of Hong Kong. But having said that, the South Asians and Africans can be seen as Hong Kongers.
I mean, if you ask me now, a lot more people call me Hengongyan right away without having to explain myself. And I'm like, wow, what a change. And I truly believe Chungking was part of that change. You know, people come in, they do the tours, they go through our cultural sensitivity training. They also realize that the ethnic others are also Hong Kongers. As much as people are immigrating outside, I still think there's a lot of Hong Kongers here that remain and want Hong Kong to be truly international, and I think they believe Chungking Mansions plays that part in that.